All right, guys, I am super excited. Today, I am with Eric Doherty, and he is from DPE International. Amazing guy. Had some previous conversations with the gentleman, and just amazing guy to have with us today. Eric, can you just give us a quick introduction about kind of where you are today? We'll have some fun with where you were in your journey, but can you kind of share where you stand today in the world?
Yeah, thanks, Phil. Really appreciate it. Well, in the world, I'm actually in America, so I'm down in a little state known as Georgia, one of the top 10 states in the country. I'm in Atlanta, Georgia, and I've been here for about the last 10 years. It'll be 10 years in November. Love the area. I've got a group that I'm overseeing right now called DPE International that Phil referenced. That's a global consulting firm, and primarily our focus is on healthcare and AI initiatives. We do a lot of project management work for everything from pharmaceutical companies to medical device companies, digital healthcare companies, and hospitals around the world. And when it comes to either processes, when it comes to strategy, when it comes to go-to-market outcomes, and kind of the analysis of those are the things we kind of focus in on. And then obviously the AI component, which is most recently been placed into kind of all of our kind of personas. The AI component really kind of lends itself to a lot of new initiatives and new technologies. And so we're looking at, strapping on things that maybe companies or individuals that are starting up companies don't really have knowledge of. And so we kind of go through the process of implementing those and putting them in place to basically help their businesses run more smoothly and obviously drive revenues.
Awesome. um, no, guys, this is the most modest description of what somebody can say. If Eric like went through everything that he's done, he's I don't know if it's rude or polite nowadays, but Eric is like a unicorn. He has been CTO, CFO, basically CEO, co-founder, played every role. I've gone through your history and I'm just gloating on you, right? I have not seen a role that you haven't performed amazingly in.
Thank you. Yeah, and I've been blessed. I mean, I think, in the roles and even in the companies I've been part of, to have the ability to tap into, I think, great people, great connections within those companies and even outside of those companies, and just really kind of building a network. I think that's been kind of the huge benefit I've been able to gather kind of in my working life. I've been on the marketing side, I've been on the sales side, I've been on the operations side. I've had the ability to, do M&A, do development, to look for new kind of ways of either medical device potential or even from a drug delivery and drug efficacy standpoint. Some of the aspects around that. So, that's been kind of the, I guess, win-win to be able to, have all those different touch points. But I think the other, end kind of benefit is, just the people I've been in contact with and the people that I've gotten to know. My mentor was Bob Ingram. He was the CEO of Glaxo Inc. and Glaxo Wellcome when I first started into the healthcare world. He grew up in Central Illinois. I grew up in Central Illinois. He went to Eastern Illinois. I went to Illinois State. Obviously, definitely a difference in age span, but still kind of I would say country boys at heart as far as how we kind of grew up in that aspect. And so, he, along with a number of others, were, basically folks that really infiltrated my working life and me as a person and just helped me grow.
I'm gonna have to check him out later. You mentioned him before. He sounds amazing guy.
Yep. He was very genuine. I mean, probably the most genuine, brilliant guy had ever met. Family man. He loved race cars. He loved Porsches. His big thing was Porsches. And if you look him up, find that information as well. But I myself like Mercedes Benz, so I'm an MB guy. So that's kind of interesting from that standpoint. Porsche.
Okay, so you had a little bit of conflict there. That's a healthy rivalry.
Yeah, well, too small for me. I like a little bigger. Give me the muscle, give me the speed, give me a little more comfort, I guess, because the Porsches are just kind of they're like race cars. Don't get me wrong. I'm sure they're fun to drive, but just a little bit too confining for me. I like a little larger kind of car. But yeah, that was kind of the nuance, and really just seeing him even progress when the SmithKline Beecham and Glaxo Wellcome merger occurred. that intertwining of management and kind of how that went through the process. Very, very, I guess, strategy oriented and focus minded, and just like I said, a very, very, very much a leader you could approach, have a conversation with, and not feel like he was here and you were there.
Mhm. Just really able to relate to him no matter where he was on his journey.
Exactly.
That's awesome. I kind of feel like that way around you when I'm talking with you. Um, I feel like I can relate to you even though I'm different place in my journey than you've been. And part of your story is just sitting there on the manufacturing plants. I don't know if you slept there. I imagine you sleeping in the manufacturing plants, writing the software, building the machines, and making sure that the prescriptions were manufactured to a perfect standard every time.
Well, and that was, it was finding the right people to be able to do that. The manufacturing site we had with Glock, as an example, though, over in Vienna, not that I was there all the time, but just the, people that were running that, making sure that, when a hire was made, you hired the right people. Same thing when it comes to, the leadership or sub leadership within a certain division, let's say that's selling a drug or selling a medical device, or from a marketing team, et cetera. You want to make sure you've got the right people on board to really kind of lead things. And a lot of it, you as you can imagine, there's folks that are qualified, maybe from a school standpoint, but really not qualified to really either lead people or maybe lead an initiative or have any potentially drive to really get things done. And so finding those right people, you look at what they've done in the past, obviously, but then how did they get there, that journey through that
Uh-huh.
process. And so really kind of understanding that lends itself to really finding, I think, the best type of people for certain types of roles. And it's going to change based on the role. So if you've got an IT person, they may be introverted. That's fine. That's in a lot of cases they are. And so, you just have to understand that type of mentality. On the flip side, from a sales standpoint or even marketing standpoint, you want somebody that's probably more outgoing, not gregarious, but outgoing and more personable, et cetera. So you've got to really kind of tie kind of the needs and then the role and then make it happen.
It's important to see where you're getting your energy from and how work is going to satisfy that human need. And that is definitely like a leadership skill to pull that out of somebody.
Yeah, well, you've got to have that passion, and hopefully you find that in them as well. Do they want a job, or do they want a role? Big difference there. And so finding that out.
What their reward structure, personal reward structure is.
Yeah, yeah, and does their job help define what they ultimately want to do or become? And so if it does, that's a great fit, great match. If it doesn't, then obviously you find somebody else that kind of fits that role, to a T. I think in a lot of the roles.
I think that's a golden nugget.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the roles that I've been in, we talked about it last time, it's the passion side. It's really ensuring that when you're in a role, you understand the role, but you understand the nuances of how it affects the business, how it affects the company, how it affects the outcomes that are being produced or being made or being driven by the company. And having that passion and the ability to kind of take that passion inwards and use it as uh, I would say a work mode, I think, is pretty cool.
There's a lot to unravel there. Um, I'm going to take a couple steps back for 1 second because one of the things you mentioned about is looking at the the things you apparently look for, and correct me, is you're looking for hiring leaders when you're initially building your startup. So you're looking to build people in those leadership roles that will then carry on the 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 mission, kind of take probably weight off your shoulder so you can focus on the big things. If specifically talking to like the founders and the co-founders.
Yeah, you want to find people on your team that you can delegate projects to, or delegate, certain things within a company to do, and you feel comfortable knowing that that individual can take that project or take that delegated, whatever it is, and run with it and not have to worry about it. I don't feel that as somebody who's running a business or running a company or running a division, should have to handhold. I think it should be something where you find the right people They understand what they need to do. They come if they have questions. Obviously, I'm here to answer questions and give them further direction if needed.
Yeah, they definitely need to be fed the vision.
Right. Yeah, but then let them go. And, obviously follow along and, ensure that you're, watching to see, kind of what's happening as they are progressing. But in general, I mean, I think that's just the best way to lead. I mean, I think makes people happier. They don't have a micromanager. I think it makes people happier where, they know that, you've got their back if something does kind of go south or go left or go maybe not as right as you had expected. And, just I think those are the things that from a leadership standpoint, you've got to have, and that ability to tap into that and find those right people that can take that on and run with it. That's the best running organization.
That's that's yeah. I haven't heard better definition than I think on how to bring to hire mission-oriented people that are aligned with you. The and when I'm looking, you said something that triggers some thoughts in me where you're looking at their journey. You want to know how they got there, where they came from, what was their process. And it takes me back to what we were talking about last week, where I was talking like I'm seeing people going along a path from idea to startup, early startup to then kind of advanced startup. And we'll talk more about that later, but they go through this early startup, but then they start to look like a business. Then they, either become, and this is something you kind of, um, we'll talk more about this, but because I got to get my head wrapped around your understanding of this, but there's like a fork. You can go from the way it sounded from you is you can go from startup to enterprise level, or you can go startup, SMB, and eventually get to enterprise. But there's a mentality in there or some kind of special sauce that I think maybe you've landed on that helps you skip that SMB, that small level.
Yeah, 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 yeah. I think, again, I think where a lot of startups, I would say, stagnate. That's probably the best way to put it, where they get to a point and they don't know how to get further. It's that person who's probably in the leadership level, or maybe it's persons in those leadership levels that don't know how to get over that hurdle, how to get over that wall. And so I think, if you don't know, then that's a good thing, because then you kind of already kind of say, okay, if I don't know, how do I do that? Is it a people thing where maybe the skill sets are not there to do that? Is it a uh, I would say ability end of things
Mhm.
where they don't have the ability to take it forward? So I think that those are kind of the two things that are needing to be looked at. And if they aren't, then you may need to find other people that can. And so, understanding that, putting it in play to say, okay, I need to go to the next step. This is how it needs to be done. It may not be with me. It may not be with this person or that person. So I need to make those, I mean, unfortunately, changes, necessary or unnecessary as they may be. You need to make those changes to make the business go in that direction. And so understanding that's probably the biggest thing. And some folks, they stagnate out, they don't understand it, they don't realize it, they don't hit that kind of knowledge wow. And if they don't hit that knowledge wow, business goes down.
That's where you either stagnate at you stuck at a small to medium level, and you never get there. Um, this is kind of like a dear and painful topic for me also, because I know where I'm good at, and depending on the role that I come in when I'm founding a company or supporting a company, I'm like, okay, this is how far I can take you in this role, right? And yeah, you may see where I'm useful somewhere else. Maybe I'll become a board member later on, but past here, I'm not useful. This is as far as I can take you on this journey. I can set you up for the next, but that's not my place in the world.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of where for me, I mean, as we talked, I'm not a code guy. I don't code. I mean, like we laughed at it. Where in the next year or two, I won't have to because of AI. But I look at the visionary side of it. I look at what, I know what I want to get. I know what I want it to look like. I know, how I want it to feel. I know what I want the outcomes to be and how folks interact with whatever I'm trying to configure or set up. And then obviously you find the people that then can build that directly and then oversee that. But I think, when it comes to a business and moving things forward, if you don't have the ability to understand that, okay, I don't have the quote unquote technical skills, you find the right people to handle those technical skills to build it. So again, going back to our earlier part of the conversation, finding the right people for those roles to drive the business is the best thing. And I'll go back. You mentioned like trying to find folks. Where I think where I kind of have always looked at is, and even it's for folks. And one of the questions is, what did you do during high school? What did you do during college? Not the
Mhm.
classes in high school, not the classes in college, but what did you do? Did you interact in sports? Did you interact on the speech team or in politics within the student government for either high school or college? Did you work part time, full time? Where did you work? What did you do during the summers? What did you do? So getting to kind of those basics again, these are for folks that would be coming in more at an entry level or mid to entry level. But those are questions that you ask to really kind of see what their driver is. I mean, did they just go through the motions of high school and college, or did they really participate and become active, become potential leaders? So all of that kind of gets you some information. If they were on a certain sports team, obviously they're competitive, so there's that side for sales. Did they do any type of IT computer teams or clubs? Obviously, that's a good IT fit. So just those types of questions can really give you some pretty quick answers on who a person potentially is. I mean, they're not going to, answer it fully, but it does give you some direction.
Do you so far you've mentioned IT, sales, and we've made some assumptions with your manufacturing background. So I'm going to add a uh, manufacturing as a third category. But are those like the big two or three categories that you're looking at when you start planning out your hierarchy of how you're going to bring in talent?
For me, it would be more. No, I would add in operational. I would add in
Hmm.
commercial, and commercial meaning like the sales and marketing part of it.
Hmm.
Those would be the kind of the elements I'd look at bringing in. And then again, depending upon the technology that you're working on, yeah, manufacturing would be kind of I would say the fourth placement in that
Hmm.
list. Just to be again, if you're looking at either a medical device, obviously having the staffing to build that, and or
Hmm.
if you're running a pharmaceutical group, from a manufacturing standpoint, having the ability to manufacture product that way. And even within those nuances of
Hmm.
medical device and pharma, there's some crossover because, as you know, there's devices that are part of medical application or pharmaceutical applications. So
Uh-huh.
be it uh, medical device like I would call it more of a structured injector. That would be something
Hmm.
like a medical device crossover.
Hmm.
Now there's inhalers, so there's some kind of drawing upon both sides on the pharma
Hmm.
end. But typically, you'd look at that fourth level of manufacturing as being the key component.
Okay, I love it. The in my world, a lot of times we will the startups I work with, they'll outsource the manufacturing component of it, but they don't realize how much they have to get involved and keep
Yeah.
their I don't want to say thumb on it, but to keep their eye on it because if you don't really pay attention and lead the manufacturing process, especially when you're outsourcing it outside of the country, it can really get outside of your control because they'll just let
Well,
you fall apart.
and okay, so we'll talk a real thing you can hold, okay? But
Hmm.
then let's also talk. We can talk about the IT side too, because they actually run very similar because again, on the IT side, as you know, there's the
Uh huh.
scrum meetings and you got to have those on a regular basis
Yep.
to basically go through with the process and ensure that the system is being put in place the way it's supposed to be done. If you have those folks that are offshore, you've got to make sure. We had a lot of Indian teams in my last company, so
Hmm.
we'd have to get up at 5:30, 6 o'clock for meetings because India is 12-hour difference ish, and so
Yep.
ensuring that we were able to connect with them on a regular basis and have that going on. And the same thing on the manufacturing side for a good. You've got to obviously, be in process with them. The thing with outsourcing of design and development, you've really got to give them direction on what your kind of outcome needs to be. And so going
Hmm.
back to what I mentioned earlier, that's where the vision part of it comes into play. So if you give
Yep.
them the vision, you give them kind of the direction on what you want to have as a true outcome, that helps
Hmm.
drive the process. But you
Yep.
do have to have, I would say, be over communicative with your outsourced teams on
Uh-huh.
both the IT side as well as on the design aspect, just because, if things do go kind of skirmish, you've got to basically pull them back in and make sure that they get back on track pretty quickly. Otherwise, you're going to
Hmm.
basically, spend more money than you need, and
Yep.
it's not beneficial to the company, especially in a
Yeah.
startup.
Yeah, it's super hard, especially with hardware. Like you showed a phone. A phone
Yeah,
has an operating level, says operating level systems. So it has the physical components, it has drivers, it has the software level, and then it has the operational level, like the operating system, like Windows or
iOS. Yep,
iOS, right? So there's a lot involved in it, and you can't take any of that for credit, especially when you're controlling that because you're getting your own version of that software and it can be or should be customized to the needs that you give to it. So easy to
yep,
let that get out of control. If
exactly.
outsourcing or insourcing, that is for maybe another discussion. We only have like 90 minutes a day. We don't. I
Well,
don't
I was
think
going
we
to
can
say
get
too,
through that
just
one.
for those folks that are starting up, I mean, also then protect things. Just make sure that you've got the correct NDAs in place. Make sure you've got
Mhm.
potentially the correct patents in
Yep.
place. Either prior to, as you're going through the process, and obviously post. Make sure you file those patents, because you need to
Hmm.
protect the technology on the IT as well as on the product itself, but you also have to
Hmm.
protect the company. And so, ensuring that those are fileable, patent issues, do it,
Yep.
because it's worth the money to protect the
Yeah.
organization.
Anytime you can, absolutely. It makes
Yep.
investors kind of. It's one of those investor love languages.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you have a patented item? If you do, that's gold.
Yep.
Probably platinum nowadays.
Right. Right. Goes and platinum. Love it. The So to going from understanding the roles, the major roles you have to fill, operations, IT, sales, marketing, manufacturing, distribution, to looking at people's journeys from you know what they did in high school, what they did in college, what they've done up to the workplace. Um, and this kind of thing comes to my mind right away. Do you hire senior level people or do you try to look for people that are younger, that are just fresh out of high school, fresh out of college? Do you have a
It's a mix. Yeah, and again, it depends on the role. If
Mhm.
it's something where it is somebody, leading more of a BU or a division business, obviously you want somebody that's kind of either done that or done something similar in that level. So, it really depends on the role. Goes back to that. I think if you're looking for somebody who's an analyst, or somebody who's a market researcher, or somebody who is in just starting up in sales, yeah, you'd probably go more the somebody out of college, or somebody, newly in the workforce, maybe 2 to 5 years at the most. But yeah, definitely for
Mhm.
the other levels, if you've got somebody who you need experience that has kind of either run, through a manufacturing company, or run through some type of a pharma or medical device company, you definitely need to find that talent through that kind of level, in
Uh-huh.
general.
Yeah, because they gotta have experience and they've
Yeah.
gotta have gotten certifications and approvals and burned through that a few times because it's not just what's on paper, but relationships and it's understanding the pain points.
Yeah, understanding that, and even, like, I'll go to like the FDA or medical device side. There's obviously government approval. So if you're moving into a country, you have to understand the nuances of, what the government needs to approve your medical device or pharmaceutical.
Mhm.
Same thing here, obviously, with the FDA in the United States. There's certain processes, there's certain filings, there's certain rules and regs on manufacturing, and ISO 1345 and all of that kind of goes around, the manufacturing processes and following those basically to a T, and then the
Mhm,
documentation around that. So you need those folks that understand that fully and can control that. And, basically, if
mhm.
there's ever a question, they know where to go to get that answer.
Yeah,
Finding the right
yeah.
people. That's it.
Yeah, yeah, knowing what it is, right? And you get to
Yeah.
know those people by the time you've done like if, even if you're in construction, right? You have to know the people in the code office.
Yep.
If you're doing pharmaceutical, you have to know the inspectors. You have to know the people that do the plans and to look through the approvals right up all the way through it. So
Yeah.
that the
That's it.
here experience is not a joke. Um, which kind of
Well,
brings me.
Well, I was
Go
gonna
ahead.
say, well, I was just gonna add to it. I mean, again, going back to the passion that we talked about earlier, those same folks that are running regulatory or running the medical science groups within a lot of these medical device and pharma teams, you know, they've got that passion. They've got that passion to help drive the product forward, to help patients, ensure that their lives are saved or their lives are made better. So that passion, I would say 110% of the time, if not 180% of the time. Those folks have the passion to drive that forward to ensure that those products are either moved through the FDA or some other government approval process, and have the knowledge base to make that happen.
Perfect, perfect, and there's no how okay, so sounds easy, right? But, like, yeah, I'm just gonna find that guy. Uh, but it's just like, for me to say, "Yeah, I'm gonna be the best programmer in the world," but, I have to get somewhere. And okay, so before I was, I think, able to be successful at helping people create businesses, or at least as successful as I've been, which is not anywhere as near as successful as I'm trying to be. Um, but I went like just being good at my skill was never really enough. So I was able to get. I was programming since I was 8 years old,
Wow.
uh, and not to make this about me, but I'm really good at programming. And unfortunately, I don't get to my hands on a keyboard as much as I would love to, because you kind of outgrow certain roles, right? With skill and leadership comes certain responsibility. But it was never just about how good I was at hammering nails per se, or creating great code that did what I said it was going to do, and it was smooth. But there's a point when it had to be more than that, than just talent. And I started when I was probably 30. I started looking for mentors to say, hey, like, okay, I'm a young guy. At 30, I was headstrong as hell, um, stubborn, and just, I'm the best in the world. Like, thought I was great. But I'm like, there's something not right. So I started looking for mentors. And I probably like burned more friends than anybody else in the universe. but but there's an art to it, right? So I kind of laugh because before you're able to really build a business, there's some steps before that. So there's some planning steps. There's some who knows what, but you don't know it until you talk to people and you build some relationships with somebody who's been there to kind of help you see, like, hey, Phil, stop being stupid. This is not it. Look at this, right? And I call this mentorship now. Maybe you call it something else, but what do you think?
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, I've had mentors throughout my working life and outside of work as well. So that has helped. Again, that connectivity is very much a key. And then on the flip side, as you and I talked last time, I do a lot of mentoring as well, both at the university level and outside of working situations. And it's a go to. I think it's something where I would even go one step further and call it more of a either a business friendship, which again, if you keep it down that mentoring line for business or work, that would be that, or an outside friendship could be obviously a mentor too. But I think just having somebody or somebody's, not a word I know, but
We'll go with it. If Bush can do it, we can make up more.
we're on a podcast, we can do anything.
We are the authorities now.
Exactly, exactly. It's our podcast, so we're going to rule it.
It's our show.
So, but I do think, you've got to have those folks that have been in that kind of role have gone through. Maybe they hit some roadblocks that hopefully you won't, and you get understanding from them to avoid those roadblocks. But I think it's a two-way road too. You mentioned the burning bridges. I think it's something where you just need to help them out too. I think and ask them if they would like help. Don't tell them, but ask them if they would like help, and if they
Mhm.
would, then obviously chime in and maybe help them in some way or fashion. And then again, I also say on the flip side, mentoring folks. I'm a big fan of mentoring. I've done that for a number of years. My kids have now graduated from the University of Georgia. I still do mentoring there. So it's keeping that connection point, keeping the youth. I think is awesome because you get a lot of insight from them as to what's happening potentially in the business world and what they're hearing from either going through interviews or doing things in school with companies to kind of work on projects and things of that nature. There's some, I think just some insights and I would say just tads of wisdom that come out of some of the meetings I've had with these mentees. And so there's that side of it, and they're fun. They're a great connection point. And I've had folks from the United States, but I've had students from all over the world, which is really awesome because then you get that global aspect as to what's happening either in the healthcare sector or manufacturing sector or some other work area. And so it's definitely a path that I would say everybody, I call it mentoring up, mentor up. I think it's a big thing that everybody should do because you're only helping folks.
I, uh, I think when you teach or mentor, you learn more than sometimes you do as a student. So it's, you could call it self gratifying or self very rewarding. But you'd be surprised. Some people try to hold that knowledge and like, yeah, if I give away my secret sauce, I won't be useful to the world anymore. But I don't think that's true.
No, no, you're actually spreading your wealth.
Hmm.
I think that's really what it is. You're helping others to ultimately help you, yes, potentially, but I think you're also um, you're making yourself better just by doing that, just because you're helping somebody else. And I don't think you should ever have that attitude.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people are surprised on how much they can actually give back to the world. It's easy to say I don't know anything. Like they can just go to YouTube and know what I and see what I know. But there is just something very rewarding something like just karma seems to love it, and it's good energy too.
Very true, and that's kind of the thing too. And anybody who wants to link up with me on LinkedIn, please do. Who's listening to this? But that's the other side of it. So I've been very fortunate in connecting with a lot of businesses that are either startup and or kind of in that mid to high area where they're ready to kind of go to the precipice of the kind of high
Mhm.
volume business area, and helping them out, giving them some insight, giving them some direction on what didn't work with maybe some of the work that I've done in the past, or something that maybe did work and that they really need to do and do it quickly. Those are the things that I think are very helpful. So I've got a medical school that I'm part of. I've got a sensor group. I've got a cybersecurity group. I've got a bio group. I've got a medical device group, and I'm missing one, I think. Oh, and then a neurology group that's a
Wow.
global group, which is really cool. And so there's just those are, again, you get involved. You're not on meetings every week, but there's once or twice a month you might get a ping on helping out and maybe giving some direction. It doesn't take a lot of time, but it's definitely valuable to obviously them, and really it's all valuable to me too because I like sharing that type of expertise and information if needed.
And it's very capitalist thing to do, by the way. Like if you like capitalism,
Yep.
it's, like, good for the capitalism, so, no bads. No bads in mentoring. Thank you so much for putting out that offer. I'm gonna make sure I put your, LinkedIn link down in your company, link in below, and remind me to put anything special in that description, for when this goes live. I can attest you've been very generous with me and fun to talk with, so I cannot even
Same here. Appreciate it.
just grown a lot with you. So I'm definitely enjoying our conversations together so far. And we've only had one and a half of them. Um, so I've decided that stage one of a business is mentorship, finding mentorship. And it took me a little while to come to this, that like all that story before was to make that point. It's you don't know, right? You don't know what you don't know. And when you get some mentorship, they help point it out. uh, and it's just the first thing to do. And then there's like various stages. There's the startups, there's fast growth. I call that stage two if I had to label it for a short conversation. Stage three is that SMB fork or hurdle that you can hopefully jump over, like you seem to do, depending on how you plan things. We could call it stagnation or get over it, right?
Yeah, either one or lose it. So really 3 options there. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. My favorite is just jump over it if you can. Hard to do on your own. That's the value. Like mentors will help you do that. If you're just a regular person that hasn't done it before, it's so easy to get lost in either the stages, the startup stage or in that SMB stage before you really ever bring value to the world. The fourth stage I'd call like enterprise, uh, enterprise versus startup thinking. It's now you've gotten over that hurdle of you know proving what the product is, showing how to get customers, learning how to scale. You've gone past all that. So now you're we'll talk more about that, what actually enterprise is, how to know if you're there, or how to identify where you need to go. I guess stage five would be like developing a global perspective, and maybe integrating AI nowadays. But nowadays, it's like AI comes in earlier, I think. But I think it used to be different.
Yeah, much, much earlier. Now that there's so many tools out there that can help you, I would say probably even at the stage 1 to 2 level nowadays, depending upon how you're using it. It's, definitely, I would say, a go-to need for any business, just because of how much more efficient it can make it.
Yeah, yeah. I used to look at AI as machine learning. And I used to think the best time to integrate that was once you're a small to medium sized business. Because before then, unless you were just like an AI company like TikTok, essentially like an AI algorithm, right? If that's what your real value is, the algorithm, that's different. But if you're a startup, I used to be like, well, okay, machine learning is kind of complicated. You need data, you need this, you need to prove your concept first, and then you can do that. But now, like, you can be mentored with AI, and you can prepare ahead of time to talk to a mentor and not waste their time by doing a little bit of role playing with AI. So exactly stage one uh, is a big deal. And I'm so laughing, like, cause I like how many times have I been embarrassed in front of one of my mentors, and I've had many, I still have many. I haven't slowed down with them. And right now you're one of my mentors, and I thank you. Um, is just preparing for that so that I don't waste your time, or at least try to entertain you, give you some kind of value during our interactions, rather than like, oh, what is this definition and what is this stuff?
Yeah,
Um,
what direction are we going? Yeah, exactly.
right, right. Bring something to the table, and then let you smack me around a little bit so you have some more fun on it. Not that mentors smack people around, guys. No, mentors are very nice, except for me.
Some might, depends. Depends what questions you ask us.
Right, right. Yeah, yeah. It's like, oh, you're pushing the label now. Um, so totally, the world's changed a lot, but it hasn't changed that much, right? Out of the all these stages, really, the only thing that's changed nowadays is where do I put in AI, which you're actually pretty amazing at, by the way, from what I've been reading. Not to try to blow up your ego, but where do you see that? Like, how would you apply it?
No, again, it depends on the company and what you're doing, obviously. But we talked about stage 1, stage 2. There are things that you can put into play within a CRM, as an example, to make your outgoing messages much more, I would say, efficiently, um, proactively marketable. So if you're doing outbound, commercial marketing, there's now AI that drives a lot of that, and kind of if you set upon, a certain demographic and a certain part of the country or part of the world, there is AI out there that can help drive your messaging. If you look at the manufacturing side, there are processes not just machine learning, but there are processes now in AI that can help you, look at manpower hours. They can look at the number of people that you have working within a manufacturing line. They can look at the production levels. They can look at the material that you're using and the benefits of using one material over another, or how much. Anything and everything you can think of now, AI can wrap around itself on. Um, so the earlier, the better. I think is beneficial. And I also think the one thing that, and again, you and I are in the kind of IT world where this type of stuff is very, I would call it rudimentary to us. That it's not a scary thing. You have to understand, there's a lot of folks that are still scared of technology. They may be in a role or a manufacturing role.
And they should be because soon, we'll have Terminators.
Well, yeah, whatever. But I think there are some things, and again, Skynet, you got to watch out. But there are some folks out there that are not comfortable, I guess is a better way to put it, with a lot of technology. So really, getting them involved, getting them to understand the benefits, getting them to, I would say, work with it, and hopefully in very much quick time understand the need that they need to get comfortable with it. I think that's a big thing that has to be done on any level within an organization, just because of the newness of this technology. And like you said, machine learning has been around for years. People don't realize that. It's been around for probably 20, 30 years. You have data, you have it constructed to do a certain thing, and then you have an outcome.
Oh, yeah, since the '70s, I think, really, there's been some degree of machine learning.
Yeah, yeah, but now it's all this generative and agentic that's coming into play, and there's a little more play in what they're doing with it, and I think there's a lot of again, huge benefits. There's probably some negative items that can come out of it too. So you got to be cautious of that, depending upon where it's being used. But when you're starting up a business, or you're in that kind of 2, 3 level, or even one, start thinking about where you can use it and use it beneficially to the organization to either drive revenues or efficiencies.
Yeah, it helps you. One of the things I really look at it is it helps you learn faster. Not just like learn skills or how to spell, but how to recognize patterns, how to see identify systems, how to identify processes. And it might be totally wrong in the way it identifies things, but it gets you thinking in that process, and you start to see how to apply other AI technologies, how to apply standard technologies in better ways, and you learn how to test things faster, to adapt faster, and to respond in ways with increased learning rather than over resilience. And I think my big fear with AI is over resilience on it without understanding of what you're applying.
Hmm, that's a good one. Yeah, yeah. I think my biggest fear is too much reliance on the AI outcome without reviewing it.
Mhm. Similar concept. Yeah, yours might be a
Yep.
little more accurate. It's like just totally advocating responsibility to an algorithm without
Don't
without reviewing
don't
it.
don't let AI give you the full answer without reviewing it.
Yep.
Go through, either if you're asking it to do such and such, make sure you review to ensure that that has been done and that is the outcome that has
Uh-huh.
been provided. If it's not, that can cause a heck of a lot of problems. And so
A
just
lot of embarrassment.
yeah, yeah, and really ensuring that. So that would be my big takeaway for anybody on here. Review, review, review.
Yep, yep. Test and validate. Have fun
Yep.
with it. Have fun with it, but test and
Yeah.
validate
Yeah.
and see how
And
you
I
can
mean,
prove it wrong.
and I think, like you said too, you do learn from it. I think it really gives you more of an analyzing way of going through the motions of getting to that end result, asking the
Mhm.
right questions, asking the right questions, um, to further that kind of defining level of a project. I think that's kind of where a
Mhm.
lot of people, start thinking, okay, I need to think about it this way. Oh, I didn't think about that. Let me put this in. So those are
Yep.
little things I think in time really do help out quite a bit.
Yeah, yeah, there's a, like, so manufacturing, so I think some people say as, like, manufacturing, you go from A to B, right? Now, maybe that's true or maybe not, but if manufacturing, I'd be like, okay, it's really from, like, A to F. right?
A to
Best
Z
case.
A to Z, but yeah, I was gonna say A to Z. It's all the different things you have to worry about, but yeah.
Absolutely. Software is definitely A to Z and maybe like ZZ, right?
Yeah.
So there's so much complexity in software development and iterations. Why? Because you have a human interface, and as soon as you bring in that to any kind of touch point to people, be prepared to change your entire plan. Things can go crazy.
Yeah.
Manufacturing is the same, but what do you think? Not all manufacturing really is the direct result of it is a end user. Sometimes there's a lot of intermediate
Yeah,
functionality.
yeah, I was gonna say, in my world, on the healthcare side, either a medical device or a pharmaceutical, because of the government oversight. Everything has to be done to a T. And so if the quantity is not correct, or if the board's not designed correctly when you're working with a
Hmm.
medical device, those can obviously cause some huge detriment, and either if you're going through to try to get an approval, non-approval, but
Uh-huh.
also just in general, if you're putting these in a manufacturing kind of mode and you have an outcome product, you want to make sure
Hmm.
that it doesn't do any harm to the patient, right?
Yep.
So obviously, if it's an ingredient malfunction, or if it's a board malfunction or part malfunction within a medical device, that's bad. And
Hmm.
so through the process of manufacturing, those quality control checks, those areas of quality that need to be kind of looked at and looked at and looked at again and again,
Uh-huh.
those are, that A to Z as opposed to A to B places
Hmm.
that extend the manufacturing kind of line per se, but also
Uh-huh.
ensure that the end product is of quality to go out into the market and not harm somebody.
Yeah. Big deal. I love how you say just, make sure that you have your process done. It's not
Yep,
just that, but you have your redundancy done. You can make it be sure it's consistent. You can identify when it's not consistent.
exactly.
A lot to
Exactly.
it.
See,
I
and,
love
and
how you
going back
simplify
to
it.
our AI topic, that sometimes will be of benefit. There's some programs out there now on the AI side that will look for those nuances. Let's say you're doing a high speed tablet press for a pharmaceutical product. There
Mhm.
are AI tools right now that will look at, okay, how I'm stamping out these tablets. Are there any anomalies that are coming up from a pictorial standpoint? Because I'll take pictures as they're going off the line, to ensure that those products are not tainted, or don't have an issue, or don't have an edge, or whatever you want to call it. So
Mhm.
those are the things that are very relevant for AI today, in really
Mhm.
helping the process and helping hopefully that manufacturability to ensure, again, the quality and safety to a patient.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. It's it's the same for manufacturing by the sounds of it as it is software development,
Yep.
as it is internal, external, outsourcing or insourcing. The I'm curious, right? Because we've gone kind of bounced around some early growth concepts and some early mentorship concepts. But what is it that somebody would come to you, and what are the approaches that somebody would use for you to say yes, I'll entertain some level of mentorship with you? Like what, like as a mentor, right? And you can make this general if you want, but if somebody's looking for mentorship from you, what are the steps they should do to maybe show they're serious about it, to show that they're prepared, not going to waste your time? Or what do you look for, like a cigar, whiskey, or you know what I'm saying? What are the
No, no,
steps?
no. I don't. Yeah, never on that one. Yeah, I think it's really what they're looking for. If they really want to pick my brain and get insight, to gain knowledge, to do something for them, be it start up their own business, or go in, a certain direction within their work levels. If they want to get up to the next level, etc. Those are the folks I'd love to have conversations with. I would say anybody who wants to start up an organization and wants to see, or hear, you know, what to do at the beginning, and put those kind of items in motion. So that would be another one. And then I think also too, it's the person that is maybe at the level, like we talked earlier. They get to that stagnant stage of a business and they don't know what to
Mhm.
do. Those would be
Mhm.
the folks I'd love to have a conversation with, just because it may be a very hard conversation to have with them, but it may be
Mhm.
a conversation that you let them know you may not have the qualities, you may not have the skill sets, you may not have the mindset, the knowledge to move that company forward. You may need to move into a different role and or find somebody else to take over your role. So
Uh-huh.
those are the things that I would say would be probably the I would say 3 or 4 areas I definitely would love to, kind of intermix with a mentee on.
Okay. Okay, cool. Cool. That's a great definition of it. So I guess if a person is looking for a mentor, look for what the person is publicly saying they're interested in. In this case, you clearly spelled out the cases you're excited about that excite
Yep,
you. Through this call, you'll understand kind of how to prepare and how to approach Eric, or like-minded successful people, based off a little research or hearing what they've talked about, or trying to get involved. The what I think you answered my next question, and I think in half, which is how do you know you should look for a mentor? And you already said if you found that you're stagnating, this is like a painful point. And I'm laughing because I was reading a book recently of the motive.
okay.
Have you read the motive before or heard of it?
I have not. No.
Okay. It's exactly a guy in the sales industry was he wasn't doing great, right? He wasn't growing. He was, he couldn't figure out how to get to the next level. And he goes to find to the advisors of his competition that
Hmm.
was doing better than him. So he realized that he was stagnating, and he was starting to freak out because he knows he has responsibility to the board and he was the CEO. So that recognizing stagnation is one stage that you should
Yep.
obviously seek out a mentor. If you're working 80 hours a week and you're not progressing, that's a big red flag, right? Ladies, tell your husband if he's doing that, go find a mentor or get out. uh what are some other key indicators where like you just don't catch yourself thinking, but you should like,
Yeah, I think if like you were saying, at that stagnant level, I would say if the business is declining, find out, is it maybe the person's leadership, or what else is it? Could be a combination of things, but I would say the person's leadership, it probably is part of it, somehow, some way. I think if you've got, I would say, uh, really, this is interesting. If you've got people leaving the company, that would be definitely an area to bring in a mentor, just because you need to find out why it's happening. Did the leader change? Did the leader change modality? Did the leader change direction? Did the leader change too much, or maybe has changed too little? So those are the things that I would say probably look at. And I think last but not least is just listen. Listen to folks that you are talking to, listen to your customers, listen to maybe your procurement folks, the folks that you're having maybe either parts for a medical device or ingredients for a pharmaceutical company. If you're buying those types of things, just have some one-offs with them every now and then, just to get some insight on what they think about the company, because they're obviously working with your company, they're obviously helping your company, but maybe there's some things that they see within the company that either aren't great and or can be changed or made better. And so those are kind of some areas as well.
perfect touch points, some very serious touch points. The and totally avoids the whole self introspection and blaming yourself thing. I love that. The It's not critical, just big clues.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and you still want to, you want to make sure you've got the right tools, be it your skills, your leadership, your mentality. Those are your skills and all of that kind of wrap around it. But you also want to make sure you got the right people, the right methodology to move the company forward, and that insight from outside of you helps quite a bit.
Yeah, and make sure you still have the right passion for the role that you're currently in. Like, don't look at your current role as a reward for previous good efforts. Look at it as where I'm at today. Yes, I earned it, but is my passion there? And does it make sense for me or for the company that I'm trying to serve? The Okay, I have a trick question. Can I give you a trick question?
Always, yeah, no problem.
Awesome. Okay, so do you, in the whole vein of the Lewis and Clark expedition, do you see yourself, do you see mentorship more like a scout that is, somebody who's been there, who's can look back and say, "Hey, here's the path," or as like a map maker, somebody who's a choreographer and can read the stars and kind of predict where you should go? Like, what do you see a mentor being?
In that scenario, a mentor would be, I would say, definitely when we're talking about the book, and I got the title for you this time, "The Character of Meriwether Lewis." It was written by Clay Jenkins a couple of years ago, and was really portrayed a lot. And if you haven't seen it, folks, please try to pull it up off of YouTube or wherever you can get your connection into it. I think it was on CNN, but Kevin Costner's The West program was. Very instrumental in providing a lot of this information. So it was awesome, awesome book and awesome series that Kevin was part of. But I think I'm going to go to a different level from a quick answer standpoint. That's kind of there. It would be the mentor would be the person who had journeyed up. So Lewis and Clark leaving St. Charles, Missouri in 1804, May of 1804. I looked that up just to make sure I had that right. I've been there, been to the place where they left. It was, and again, obviously been west, and so I've seen all the western part of the country. But for somebody like the two of them plus their crew to go in and really, honestly, like Star Trek, go to places where nobody's ever been before. That part, and then to relay what they've seen, what they've been able to document and provide that back. That would be the mentor to the mentee. That way, the next time that somebody tries that journey, they know what to look out for and or where not to go or where not to step, because you never know what might happen if they did. So those are kind of I would say I would rely on that type of person as a mentor to a mentee, the person that goes through the journey to provide back information on how next to make that journey happen easier.
I love that. I'm going to kind of interject my opinion on this because it's a fun question for me. But I'm going to use one of your words. I think we use the word mentorees, right? Did we make up the word mentorees? I think so. I think it's more about mentorees and having a collage of mixed skills to have the scout, to have the map maker, to have the guide. He had uh, Lewis brought in Clark. He wanted the older Clark, but he got the younger brother. But he said, I'm gonna treat you as a co-captain." And so he brought him in maybe for leadership, youth energy. He had that Indian girl that gave him a chance to create connections and relationships and to get the horses at a discount. He
Make sure you weren't killed.
to make sure you weren't killed, right? Try to help avoid some of those arrows that are going to hit you in the back, right? And recognize when you should run for 48 hours. Um,
Well, and the thing, we talked about it. I mean, that's the reason why I wanted to read this book because, after seeing that series, you know, we joked about it, but it's so true. AI, the way it's going now is kind of like what these guys were doing back in 1804. It was, they were leaving the constructs of society. They were leaving the constructs of not industry at the time, but obviously, somewhat of a populated area, somewhat of, I would say, the knife, fork, spoon mentality where, food was processed, food was, cooked and provided, water was, I was going to say pseudo readily available. You had your obviously, clothing and that type of thing. And they were going somewhere.
yeah, right. Water was available until it wasn't.
Right, yeah, and then they were going someplace where nobody had ever been before. Obviously Indians had been there, but no U.S. Americans had ever gone west that way. And so, to be able just to do that and to go in with their eyes wide open and to venture into an area that they had no clue what to expect, a lot like AI now, because there's things that they're doing with AI and extrapolating information through it that nobody knows kind of what nobody knows. And so as we are going through it, you learn.
Yeah. Is there really a woolly mammoth out there?
Yep. Yeah. Sasquatch, all that. So
Yes. Yeah. Is there a Sasquatch in you guys? If you're using AI, there might be a Sasquatch in there. You don't know until you start swimming with it.
those are kind of the elements that I saw were very much in parallel to what AI is. When Lewis and Clark left, St. Charles, St. Louis, Missouri, in 1804 to go and discover what was not ever known about. And so AI is a lot like that. So it's just a cool way of kind of seeing what happened 200 plus years ago.
I hope once I get the book and have a chance to go through it, I can bribe you to do like a 15 or 20-minute podcast with me to talk about the book.
I'll read it to you.
We'll have some fun. I'm it's on the way. I'm coming, but I'm just I can't wait to get through it to see your perspective. Maybe God will bless me some more every time just for that discussion.
Sure, that'd be great.
What's the hardest 90 days you've ever faced as a startup?
Honestly, yeah, kind of pseudo recent. So when I came down to Atlanta from St. Louis, starting up the Glock Group, and trying to figure out a pathway of what I was going to do with the company. My background was primarily on medical device and pharmaceuticals. I was going into a new foray where we were looking at bringing a consumer goods product that would basically be in that consumer market, but potentially move into pharmaceutical grade marketplace. And so make it basically a pharmaceutical product in the future. And so, kind of figuring out the pathway and kind of the structure of what needed to be done, where the structure of not only manufacturing, but also, who were the potential market go-to endpoints for the product, trying to figure out, how, from a distribution standpoint, things would be built. Would it be on a national scale? Would it be on a global scale? Would it be through certain vendors? Would it be through distributorships? And just kind of, trying to walk that walk and figure out kind of what was needed. I was in a warehouse by myself. It was a 55,000 square foot warehouse in Smyrna, Georgia, across the street from the Glock US headquarters here in Georgia. And, I'd be, working 14, 18 hours a day trying to figure out, and go through and connect into what needed to be done to move it forward. Some of the cool things were that because of Glock and some of the systems they already had in play, I could tap into that. But because they were guns, I'm consumer goods, pharma, potentially very much regulated, totally different. So I really couldn't use a lot of things that they had already built. So I had to basically figure a path on what CRM, how I was going to structure the CRM, how I was going to set up the manufacturing site. Yeah, just kind of all of that had to do that. And then it was the people, what types of departments that I need to put in play, then what type of people I needed in those departments to run the departments. So basically an org chart that would build that out, and then just started the process and put everything in motion and put everything together and did that in a pretty short period of time, which was great.
A lot of fun nuggets in what you just said for you for this first 90 days of this business by the sounds of it. The I'm looking at like I look at this global perspective as a later stage, and still I kind of look at it as a later stage for various reasons. But it seems like you look at the global perspective like before you maybe even consider a startup. Where do you bring it in?
Well, yeah. Yeah, and well, again, because going back to kind of the structure of what we're doing with Glock, because of the structure of moving it potentially into a pharmaceutical grade product, there's a lot of countries around the world that are easier to gain access and approval to than others. So when you're looking at certain markets, if you can get the product into a certain market easier, you look to do that and then go back and get the product into other countries later on. And so if you have that mentality right at the beginning, I think that makes it much, much easier just because you can drive revenues quicker into the business, number one. But number two, you don't spend a lot of time spinning your wheels trying to get a product approved in a country that's very, very tough to get into. And the US is one of those. I mean, I was at a meeting yesterday, and the conversation was really wrapped around some of the things that have to really truly change within the FDA to move, the process of approval of drugs much quicker, just because there's so much time, there's so much money, there's so much
Mhm.
energy put in play to try to bring a product to market. It's honestly a waste. And so things like AI hopefully will be able to speed a lot of those processes down and make them more efficient. But having a mindset of running a company to bring in revenues the quickest, US may not be the best market to enter. Other countries around the world, like India, countries in some of the parts of Latin America, some of the other parts in APAC, or maybe even in Africa, might be potential countries that you move a product into. And so that global perspective is kind of where I've been in the last 20 plus years. And so that is kind of my mentality, just because, again, running a business, if you can drive the revenues, drive them quicker, get them into a market that will be able to do that.
Just love that. And to put it in my language, like as a simple guy, I would say like what I heard was when I'm looking at the MVP, the minimum viable product, and I'm saying, okay, I can not just say what's the smallest unit that I can get that will generate some income where I have my eyes looking at, but when I look at the global markets, what's the most minimum viable product that I can create that will start generating income as I go through these stages of evolution.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, here's a good example. So I'm working with a group right now where we're looking at basically manufacturing APIs. So APIs are basically the ingredients part of a pharmaceutical product or a wellness product. So it'd be a tincture or some type of plant-based element, et cetera. So when it comes to providing that ingredient to other companies around the world, there are certain levels of quality, there's certain levels of approvals that need to be made before that product can be shipped out and or received by that company in that other country.
Mhm.
So from our standpoint, the kind of way we're looking at things is, where are some of the easier countries to move the product into, or set up strategic partnerships with other companies in those countries to be able to do that. And so those are some of the things that, if you can get a pathway to revenue quicker, do it. And again, it may not be in where your headquarters is, but can be a connect point for other countries around the world to drive revenues into the company.
And great way to start getting feedback and start seeing how users are using it and early results. Powerful, powerful, like powerful. Like I can't understate how important just this one concept is. And maybe that's why you're so fast to get to the enterprise level.
And that probably is. I mean, I think again, I don't have any fear of outside of the U.S. I think that's the thing that a lot of people try to keep pushing is the U.S. approval, which again, that's one of the largest markets. Don't get me wrong. I mean, that's the beauty of the United States marketplace, both in the pharmaceutical or medical device side. But again, when it comes to kind of a bootstrap organization as a startup or even a mid-level, you've got to make sure you've got to have the ability to drive revenues. And it may not be the United States in the next 2 to 5 years, but it will be. So having that mentality of the next 2 to 5 years of getting somewhere else to get those revenues up, and hopefully you've done your research and the product's doing well in those other countries, and now you're bringing in revenue, but you're also bringing in data, which hopefully when the FDA does their changes for approval, you can use that data as a backstop to showing the benefits of your product. That's a win-win. So why not?
And identifying risks. I love it. The I've read I've looked into I'm trying to how to say this without violating NDAs. If you're like, for example, if you want to make a baby monitoring system, where it's monitoring the baby and the heart rate and stuff like that, and making sure it's not going to die when it's sleeping, you could start it off as like a kid's walkie-talkie system as a toy,
Yeah. Yep.
right? So you don't come out and say, "Yeah, this is for babies." You're not promoting it as this. Um, and I'm trying not to get into any kind of drug concepts because I want to make it more general. But yeah, it's a toy for kids, right? And then you get some feedback, you test it out, you test out your manufacturing, you start with a smaller segment of the market, you test things, you say, oh wow, nobody likes this feature the way I thought it was going to be amazing, right? So we can throw that out the door and modify this.
Yeah, that was the one thing that came out of one of the conversations. There was a section for just FDA kind of topics, and so actually one of them was around that, where Grace Powell, who's one of the folks that's here in Atlanta, does a lot of regulatory work with medical devices. That was one thing she really stressed, was making sure that when you are going to the FDA, don't have a plethora, a number of different indications. Stick with one, maybe two that you're trying to get as an approval. You can always expand later. You can always, make that approval process down the road, but just get your product on the market. Go through, your best way, your best avenue first, expand later.
I love that. The so you're starting with this brings me to another question. Start with your simple concepts, your MVP, your real MVP, right? Not the MVP that you want to get out there, but the one that's going to satisfy your business needs. How do you know when to pivot quickly versus to stay the course? Like, no, I know this idea is going to work, or no, I know this idea is going to work, but I'll put it on the shelf for 5 years and we'll start pivoting quick so we don't get out of business or jump to the next level.
Yeah, well, I did that. So this last company I exited about a year ago, Persone. So we had a initial patent that we had licensed out of University of Florida. So the founder and I started the company back in September of 20, and we were looking to bring to market a diagnostic product that would be for COVID, because obviously it was through COVID. That would run like a PCR test, but give a result in about 15 seconds. So obviously, most PCR tests at the time were about 45 minutes to an hour to give a result. So we were working on some pretty cool tech, and we were designing it to where it was high speed, high volume, high production, high manufacturability. Um, just very, very unique. And we got to a point where we were struggling because the patents that we had been provided, because it was supposed to be a high volume, high speed manufacturing throughput, the manufacturing processes weren't going below like a level of 28 to 32 processes, where we needed about three. So, because of that, we ended up pushing the patents back to University of Florida. We started developing and working on it on our own. So we had a lab down in Jacksonville, Florida, had folks on the team that were working through that. And then we ended up hitting a level of frustration where we just still were not getting what we needed to get to from a level standpoint. And it was at that kind of threshold where, do we go this way and spend more and more money trying to get to an endpoint, or do we go this way?
Yeah, you've already made two pivots.
Yep. And so, because of the platform that we were using, it was basically electrochemical biosensor technology. So we were getting a digital waveform out of the outcome of the data. And so because of that, we said, okay, let's start thinking through, where can we potentially apply the data side of it into other elements of business for the company. And so because of that, we ended up moving and morphing more into a data analytics potential company, and more of an IT digital healthcare organization as opposed to a diagnostic.
Oh, what a huge pivot.
Huge, 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 because not only do you have a total kind of firm direction of the company, you also have the people. So you have people that were in the lab that were working on the unit for the diagnostic. You're moving to a digital world where those folks aren't needed. So you now need IT people.
Yeah, you're going to fire these people.
Totally, totally different. And so we had to go through that change element where some folks were unfortunately let go just because the need of the business wasn't there. Other folks were hired on because we needed a more of an IT structure, more of an internal development structure to kind of run that. We looked at outsourcing, so we had folks over in India that did some of our outsource work. So yeah, it was one of those areas where we had to make that pivot, had to make the pivot for the business, had to make the pivot based on the technology, had to make the pivot because we knew it would work. Quicker than the diagnostic. And on the diagnostic, would it work? Probably, yeah, we'd probably have gotten to a point where it would have and worked well, but the money that was needed was about anywhere between 30 to 50 million, if not more, to kind of get to that point. And, obviously that was not something that we had as a startup and morphed into more of the digital.
Mhm. Beautiful and sad story at the same time. I bet you did a lot more good in the time that you had and the resources you had by doing this than if you try to kept fighting for that one angle and see if you're successful or not in time.
It was definitely the right pivot. It was. And again, COVID was kind of waning anyhow, so that was the other side of it where we needed the money, and the money was not coming in just because COVID wasn't as much of an issue. And so we had done the BARDA submissions, we had done the government submissions, we did the DoD submissions, and just as COVID was waning, the money just started drying up, and it was for the best. And again, change management, yes, but had to be done from a leadership standpoint, had to be done the right way because obviously you've got people's lives that, they were part of the company. They were doing what they thought was the best for the company. And unfortunately, we had to make that pivot. They were obviously communicated on what was happening and why, but, they also understood the reasons. And it was just, it was I would say not a totally sad time, but it was definitely a needed time for the business to be pivoting.
Yeah, yeah, definitely a hard and perhaps painful discussion that be had. And there's a lot of things I heard in that conversation. One, you're paying attention to the macro economy, and then you're also looking internally at how long is it going to take you to get results. You recognize an opportunity, right? That recognition that wow, we're good at the data. Like these guys are actually making the money over here or the opportunity over here. And while I love these guys and I've spent all my time with them, yeah, like Amazon created their cloud platform basically by saying, "Hey, we have these extra resources now, and we did it for us. We can sell it." Right? They're like, "Yeah." So meanwhile, we're selling books. I bet there had to be like somebody saying, "Dude, we sell books like newspapers, dog food, and you want to sell electronic bytes and yeses and no, zeros and ones? No, dude, you're dumb." Somebody had to say that.
Yeah. Well, and that was the thing too. So, when we did that pivot, we had some pretty strong conversations as we talked last time with SAS Incorporated out of Cary, out of Raleigh, North Carolina. And through that, then we developed an MSA with them to develop a project together. And so we had a number of their folks on their team working with our team, both the IT team over in India as well as our IT team here in the United States. And, to have them as a true partner for, again, a company that made the pivot, was a smaller company, to really have a global recognized organization like SAS and a very reputable organization like SAS to be a partner of ours was awesome. And so a lot of that, was kind of the precipitous of why we made that change and made that change quickly. And obviously the project that we were working on with them was just an awesome project, and they're a great company, and was, just a great group of people to work with.
That's awesome. I kind of imagine myself like Lewis and Clark. I'm sitting on the side of one side of the Mississippi. It's like, this is the job, but it's going to hurt over there. So let's get going.
We need to get over there. Yeah, exactly. How are we going to do it? And let's make sure we have the right boat, and let's see if we can partner up with somebody to make that happen as well. And yeah, it makes the travel much easier.
That's awesome. The so pivot on that, and this is kind of like if you had stayed there, you would have been maybe you had some success, but you would have been pigeoned in that maybe small or medium sized business without significant profit or return on investors, or maybe just a slow death, like which happens too often. What are some of the other hurdles that when I'm listening to this story, I'm like, that was a trigger to get me to the enterprise level. This is a turning point when I had to decide here, and I might not have caught myself, or I might have that voice in my head said, "Gosh, I have 10 lab technicians that can't feed themselves if I go in this direction." Like, what other triggers am I missing that is going to help me recognize that I need to skip this medium-sized business mindset or opportunity and do the big scale enterprise solution that's going to change the world?
I think it's well, I'll go back to the pharmacy system I was running. So I had a 7 state, 7 site pharmacy system, and I came on board to basically do the process of selling the company. And I think a lot of it was really at the beginning figuring out how it was running, the people, the manpower that were involved, the processes that were involved, the machinery that were involved. And again, these were they were basically counting pills by hand. Um, how could you increase the efficiencies by that? So you bring in machinery. Were there enough folks on the line to provide the medications timely? Was the distribution system set up correctly? Were the people correct? And so just observing and doing that at the beginning and kind of taking a step back and taking that observational lens for the first, I would say, probably first month to 2 months, and then start figuring out what needed to be done to make that change. Having that background and kind of knowledge base going forward, really helped drive that company's revenues. And so making those changes and putting, different people in place. Some people had to be moved. Some people had to be moved out of the organization. Bringing different machinery in to increase the speed, increase the quality. So there was those items, and then from even the distribution side of things, making sure that the folks were internal as opposed to external, and ensuring that they were part of the team really made the distribution better, the customer service better, and then obviously the outside viewpoint of the company better to then increase revenues because you gain more customers because of that.
That's those are great perspectives. One of the things I do, not to brag because it's not worth bragging, every 4 or 6 months, I like to, if I'm given permission. Sometimes I'm not because people are tired of my crap, but I like to get permission to play devil's advocate and just try to say, "Hey, I'm going to come up with some crazy stuff, guys." And it's not to hurt anybody's feelings, but I want to like just think outside the box. I want to just challenge any assumption that I made before and see if we're still on path. Uh, I do it like mechanically, like every 3 or 4 or 6 months, not too often because you sound like you're a pain in the butt if you do it too often. But there's some kind of, for me, mechanical process. Maybe it's not mechanical, but I mean, like iterative, like every once in a while.
It's a good check-in. It's the way I look at it. A good check-in to see if things are working correctly or doing correctly or if you're doing the right thing. Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. That's a good one. I like that.
I think it's a good thing to work in to make yourself. Are you sure we're on track? Yeah, I know we are because we're that pretty, but are we really?
Yeah, yeah. Give me the truth. Yes. Don't make me feel like I'm doing the right thing. Tell me.
Yeah, like, let's assume I'm not that pretty for a second. No, what would I look like if I were? Um, so I tend to take a little sarcastic and playful approach to it every once in a while. That gets me a little bit more grace than I would if I tried to be too serious sometimes.
There you go.
What's the difference in mindsets between a startup and an enterprise? Right, like they're different beasts. I think.
Yeah, I think, and I'll go to the kind of the latter one first because I think it's the easier one. At that level, you're just maintaining, you're not really, you still look for other business, you look for expansion, yes, but you're really trying to maintain what you've got. When you're in a startup, I mean, it's all hands on deck. You rolling up your sleeves, literally and figuratively. You're, you know, doing multiple jobs, doing jobs that you've never probably done before. I was laughing. I was talking to somebody while I was at the meeting. You're cleaning toilets. I mean, it's you're just it's a bootstrap type of mentality, and you just gotta you know pull up your pants, sync up the belt a little tighter, and move forward. So that, yeah, definitely, you're a lot more. I would say a lot more energy is put into play as a startup. A lot more effort, a lot more optimism is needed. I think that's a big one when it comes to a startup.
A lot more prayers come involved.
Yeah, yeah, and hopefully they help. Whereas with the enterprise, things are moving well and things are going well, you just really want to you want to make sure you maintain, if not make the growth incremental. Um, I think that's probably the main. Well, there's a lot of big differences. And again, some people can do both. Some people can do really one better than the other. But it's yeah, definitely. Definitely two types of not only mentalities but two types of forces forces that need to be had in those two different elements of a business.
Yeah, yeah. I've always seen. I try not to, but I see it as like yin and yang. Like Steve Jobs and Tim Cook. Um, Different kind of nature.
Yeah, you got the innovator. Yeah, yeah, with Steve, and then obviously Tim just keeping things, kind of moving and growing. We've had the iPhone. Supposedly this year is supposed to be different, but we've had the iPhone now that's pretty much been the same for the past.
Yeah, we know it's going to be so different, but
Yeah. So, they've had this version for what now? I think since the 11, 10 or 11. So little nuances here and there, but for the it's seven coming out, seventh stage. We'll see.
mhm. Yeah, it's kind of fun. It's kind of fun. Goes back to that betting, how to manage risk, or when do you look at your business strategy. The One of the books I was going through, sometimes I bring myself back to it, are the strategizer books, value proposition and business generation, model generation. And there's ways to spin off, lower the risk when you're trying to reestablish yourself or make sure you're on the right track when you're a enterprise level or a larger business. Um, there's approaches to it. It's different mindset.
Yeah, one of the things. Well, I was gonna say one of the things, and kind of goes with this too. So, one of the other speakers was leading what's called PAVE, PAVE, which is a group within Pfizer that basically looks at new business within their pharmaceutical company. And they have folks, like you said, about 26 or 27 around the world that are always looking for new opportunities to potentially bring into Pfizer to help grow their business. So again, Pfizer is a multi billion dollar organization. I think worldwide, I believe they're in the top three organizations from a pharmaceutical standpoint, and so they're in the, I want to say, 70-ish billion-dollar organizations. But one of the things that he really kind of touched on was, yes, they're looking for new business, but they're not looking for a specific. I'm sorry, they are looking for specific business, and so. One of the things that he really kind of portrayed as the organization is that, as a good example, they don't have an ophthalmology division. So if you're a company, a startup company or a middle income company coming to Pfizer to say, "Hey, I've got this great ophthalmology drug, blah 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 blah," they're going to go, "Great, here's somebody you can talk to." Not at Pfizer, because they want to stay within their lane of, you know, uh, kind of the different disease states they're already dealing with. So they've done some gene work, they've done some neurology work, et cetera. So
Mhm. Where they have their talent.
yeah, and so that was kind of interesting, and that does make sense. And again, they've got their systems in play, they've got the people in play, as you mentioned, the talent, they've got their kind of go-to market strategy in play, and so they want to stay within that. They want to grow, but they want to stay within that element. And so it was interesting to hear that because yes, if you've got an enterprise company and they start looking at outside areas like ophthalmology or like Alzheimer's or like whatever, and then they start spreading the company too thin, the company may not, they may have some problems going down the line from a business standpoint, growth standpoint. But if they stay within their lines of what they're good at and then expand upon that, may not be, a billion-dollar move in their revenue target, but at least it'll continue to grow their business.
Yeah, it helps mitigate a lot of risks. But it also seems like it's a reasonable way. Like, I'm not going to say it's unreasonable, but it seems like a reasonable solution to handle internal conflicts. Like, hey, no, this is our nature, this is our mission and policy. We're not going to go outside of that. Just very close.
Exactly. Yeah, they've defined that at the beginning and or have probably continued to redefine it. they have a plan in place each year or every 3 to 5 years, and they follow that plan to get to that endpoint. And until they change it, they keep that plan in play. And that, I don't see anything wrong with that. I think that's probably, as a large, massive organization, that's, a good play to have. And I think on the flip side, they've got the elements of, giving the direction to those incoming companies that aren't part of their potential portfolio, to give them kind of insight on where they need to go. And I think that's kind of what they've done very well, where they've, got those other organizational touch points outside of Pfizer to direct them towards, to help those other companies that they may be associated with.
Okay, so they both know how to kind of absorb startups that are in their side their kind of red zone, and they know how to reference out like, "Hey, it's not for us over here." Get some good rapport and keep building their contacts and their goodwill. Um, is that how you like to handle that kind of like that red tape, that sensitive issue when you're consulting or when you're founding the company? Is that kind of like your approach to it?
Yeah, it's pretty much, let's look at what can help the company and what can help drive it, and don't get into the nuances of, areas where you might run into a lot of trouble and or don't have the knowledge base to help that type of situation. So, having that kind of, you know, again, guidance at the beginning of an organization when you're setting it up, when you're setting up the vision, the mission, and all of that, and how that company is going to be set up and set upon going forward. You've defined it. Let's keep that definition. And until you change it, don't change.
Okay. Um, and that this is it kind of brings me to the a topic of how do you balance the urgency of change versus the the need or the lack of need for innovation inside of the companies you've worked with. So you've talked about recognizing a pivot point where you went to data analytics versus the
Diagnostic.
yeah, diagnostics. Uh, how have you ever had the opposite where you're like, I'm trying to determine if we don't have a sense of urgency or if we don't have a sense of innovation and how to balance that, or we should bring that to the table or say, no, we're happy where we're at and just kind of sit here like the iPhone.
Well, I mean, I brought it up earlier with the pharmacy system, because again, it was kind of a mom and pop pharmacy system. They were doing things kind of the old fashioned way, and so it definitely needed a pivot to enhance the business. And so it was more on that level. Again, observing and figuring out what needed to be done, but then it was also implementing it. And so to implement it, you had to let folks know why. You needed to let them know the how. You needed to get them involved as to what their part of the outcome will be. So I think once they understood that, that was kind of the element there where they were part of the uh, I was going to say not part of the problem, but they were part of the solution to get to that endpoint. And so they were, I think recognized as being pivotal in moving the organization forward as long as they understood that there were things that needed to be done to make them more efficient, to make them more at task, to make them more responsible for the work that they do and did to move it forward.
Okay, so in layman terms, you made them feel like it's their idea.
Not really necessarily that. I would say that they were part of the plan.
Uh-huh. That you integrated them and made them part of it. They're familiar with it. They're able to see the risk or the rewards and to judge it well.
Where they fit and where they would be benefiting the company and benefiting then obviously their company's role as the company moved forward.
Okay. Um, which kind of brings me into the final stage, as I see it, which I think is maybe totally blown out of the water nowadays, just like my love of AI and advanced stages, that global perspective. Um, it used to be like when I did with my wife MBA. She got the MBA, but I did every course with her back. Not to date myself or her, but back in like 2015, 2014, and it's not that long, but
Oh, we had computers back then, right? You're okay.
Yeah, we had computers back then. We had iPhones back then. It kind of looked like this, right? Uh, almost nothing changed really, except we have AI now, and maybe the world is even smaller. So, but back then we'd be like, okay, cool. You saturate your markets, and then you start, looking at global solutions where you're like, I'm in the MVP process. I want to see if I can grow an apple and sell that leading thing before I even start baking my apple pie. Uh,
Yep.
is this stage now non-existent, or is it like the first stage? Like, I don't know what should I be thinking of when I think global perspectives.
Well, again, it really depends on what product or what type of product you have. That's number one. Where can you get the best traction for your product? So obviously doing your market research and figuring out, okay, where's your go-to market in this country? Where's your go-to market compared to that country? And seeing, which one is the better, if not both, maybe both of them are the same. So really kind of walking through that and figuring out, the elements of that. And then I think also too, it gets down to, if it's a pharmaceutical product, what type of payments or reimbursements are being made on it, or same thing with medical device. If it's an IT product, how are you going to set up the pricing on it, per use, per person, blah, blah, blah. So that comes into play. Where can you potentially make strategic partnerships to move it? So maybe you license out some of the IT to another group to promote, or even on the pharmaceutical medical device. Do you license it out for another company to go in and distribute?
License out or partner.
Yep, yep. So going that route. So you got to look at kind of all of those different elements. So yeah, I think that's, do your homework, do your due diligence, and then just basically figure out, what would be the easiest, most sustainable, most revenue driven path, and go with it.
Okay, I like that. Go with it. Speaking of going with it, right now,
Don't look back. And don't look back.
don't look back. Except pivot when you have to. Like, don't be stupid about it. I love it. I love it. It sounds so easy, right? Right? There's Indians out there. Watch out. Lewis and Clark. Um,
Or Sasquatch, as we talked about.
or for their Sasquatch out there. That's what I should have used. I love it. Right now, is there anything in healthcare and the AI frontier that's exciting you? Like, is there something that has your attention right now that's exciting?
Everything, I think that's the cool thing about AI within my realm or my world. You know, Back in the day, you'd have a oncology patient, a cancer patient, who would go to a doctor and be told you've got cancer and not have an avenue out of that predicament. They they'd get sicker, it spread, they potentially would die quicker. It's just, it was bad. Bad for that patient, obviously. I think now what's happening, which is really cool, is that, even in AI in its use today, imaging data as an example. So let's take patient A, and in essence, we're going to follow patient A as they are given an IV drug therapy. We're also going to be imaging that patient over a period of time to see if their tumor shrinks or not, or their cancer is minimized. And so through AI, we can now not only see, but also project how fast that might happen, how easily it might happen, also then seeing which drug may be better. So maybe they're on one cocktail, they're moved to another, they're moved to another. You can see potentially how that tumor is minimized because of each individual cocktail. So those are the cool things that are coming out of AI.
Uh-huh.
Um,
I was wondering if those were urban legends or if that's really coming true now.
that's all coming true. So some of the things we were working on with SaaS, we were already doing some of that. So it's pretty
Mhm.
cool. The other side of it is taking in data from the electronic health records, taking in data from monitors and wearables. So if you've got an
Mhm.
EKG in a hospital, or if you've got a wearable watch or a oxygen monitor,
Uh-huh.
whatever, taking that data in and then running it through, obviously different information of algorithms and structures of data as far as what you want as an outcome, to
Mhm.
see how you can make a patient better, how you can make a
Yep.
patient healthier,
Mhm.
based on the medications they're on or their food they're eating, their bowel movements. I mean, all of that. It sounds awful,
Uh-huh.
but it's data, right? And so seeing how that all can be worked together is pretty awesome. And then taking it on the other side of it, drug development, to speed to market. If you can alleviate, let's say, human trials and use, well, not human trials, but animal trials, and potentially minimize human trials by the use of
Mhm.
AI and the drug discovery around AI technology and seeing whether or not a drug would work this way or that way. That would be really cool. The implementation of AI in the structure of medical device development, same
Uh-huh.
thing. Will this medical device hold up after this many uses? And with AI, can it be this many more uses? Or even from a
Mhm.
knee implant or a um, hip implant type of surgical procedure. Does this
Mhm.
device work better this way, or with AI, does it work better this way? So
Uh-huh.
all of that coming into play is huge. Then I'm going to throw one more thing into it. It's
Okay.
the HR component. It's the human resources
Uh-huh.
component. The AI data coming in, seeing people who are in roles already within the company, seeing how they
Mhm.
are performing and how they perform well with the company. But then
Mhm.
also, as you're looking at people to bring into a company, AI being used to look at, okay, through CVs, through LinkedIn, through what they've done potentially online, how can
Mhm.
their information be brought in to say, okay, this looks like a good person that we want to go out and talk
Uh-huh.
to and not even
Yep.
wait for them to apply.
Uh-huh.
Cool
Yeah,
stuff
a
like that.
lot of opportunity for headhunting.
Yep.
Awesome. Okay, I got it. I'm so curious, and maybe it's too personal, but what's the most enterprises or ventures you try to run at one time?
uh, 3 to 4.
Oh, wow.
Three
Okay.
to four.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's
So,
higher than
you know,
average.
well, but again, they're different enough to where it's not, um, doesn't
Mm.
cause too much effort. Again,
Uh-huh.
the board, I would call the board seats being one. So just,
Okay.
the different
Mhm.
ones, but the board seats
Yep.
being one, um, just because you're not working there every day type of thing. So it's, kind of
Mhm.
comes and goes. But I would say then the other two would be part of that. So, and then
Okay.
4 would be the mentoring part, just because I call that kind of, because it is, taking time away. You are putting effort
Mhm.
into that and all of that. So that would be that kind of fourth element.
Okay. And what and this question is, I think, maybe just exactly for you. What leadership lessons did you learn juggling 4 ventures at one time?
Yeah, again, I go back to Bob Ingram, as we talked at the beginning of this, who was the CEO of Glaxo Inc. and Glaxo Wellcome. 3 pillars: communication,
Mhm.
transparency, teamwork. You
Mhm.
run a business on those 3 pillars, you got one hell of a business. And really, it's, the teamwork and kind of that part of it is wrapped around, obviously, leadership. It's wrapped around the hiring. It's wrapped around the kind of focus of the business and how you're going to lead the business. You've got the communication part and just making sure that everybody knows why, everybody knows how, everybody knows what,
Mhm.
everybody knows if, everybody knows when. That's that communication part. And then it's the transparency, just making sure that folks are in the know and understand, you know, if something's being done, if something has been done, they understand
Mhm.
the reasons and rationale as to why. And I think if you
Uh-huh.
have that within an organization, you're going to have one hell of an organization.
Yeah, yeah, if you share all that, then you give people the chance to be involved and to enhance the system.
Yep. Yeah, and I think, within the transparency side of it, yeah, you can't be telling them obviously all the secrets of the company. Yeah, I understand that, and they understand that. I think
Yeah.
as a
Yeah,
whole, most
everybody
of them
knows
do
that.
it. It's rational thinking. But there are, if you can give them as much information as you can, and they understand
Mhm.
that you're giving them as much information as you
Yep.
possibly can because of the business scenario, they understand that, and I think it just makes a good win-win for the employee and the business, and it also,
Mhm.
I think, is a win-win just for the organizational's health and culture, and it's just a good way to drive an organization.
I love it. Great lessons from Bob. Um, Okay. The trying to figure this out, right? So we've kind of played with Lewis and Clark and AI, and today, if Lewis and Clark were about to start out and they had AI, what would be their compass today? What would be their equivalent tool going out into that brave new wilderness with Sasquatch and stars and mystical waterfalls?
Yeah, I think, and I think for them back in 1804, I think it was, we're gonna go where nobody has gone before and explore and somewhat enjoy. I hope they went that way,
Right? Try to enjoy
and
it.
and not be so be wary but not fearful.
Hmm.
Always, always looking over your shoulder, or always looking, or listening for that, tree limb, or something in the distance that you might hear, and obviously, be wary of that and be ready.
Hmm.
But I think having no fear and just really embracing the situation and getting as much information as you can and moving forward.
Yep. Going through their stories recently, I'm like, yeah, it looks like they're trying to lead with humanity, with dignity, as being as truthful as they could be. Of course, there's some balance of survival um and chess play there.
Yep.
So same things going into the air where
Yeah.
be careful, be human, and push the boundaries a little bit.
Yeah,
Like they're
and trust your surroundings, but also don't trust your surroundings, right?
uh-huh.
So, as we talked about earlier, an outcome out of an AI, algorithm may not be what you're expecting, or may not be on task as far as being what I would call truthful information. And so, making sure that you do your checks and balances. And same thing when they were heading out in 1804. Go out, but also make sure you're gonna, instead of going through the brush in a fast pace, make sure you put your feet out, make sure there's not a cliff at the end of that brush.
Uh-huh.
Gotta make sure.
Awesome. Awesome. And it's coming to the time. I have taken way too much of your time. You've
No, I
been very
appreciate it. It's been
generous.
awesome. Flew by.
Uh, Thank you so much. Let me ask my few closing questions. I warned you I would.
Yep.
Based off of the conversations, what you're seeing in the world, if we could build some kind of prototype that could be tested and put into the world to test and see if it has feet to stand on, from your experience and what you're seeing around, what would it be? What would you like to see as a prototype?
I honestly would. I mean, even with AI now, if there was a way to build, again, just again from my background being in cardiology as part of my working life, if there was to build a true AI driven artificial heart, using IT as a kind of a backbone on, really accelerating the use and the use and the need of that would be pretty awesome.
There's been some very interesting stuff for hearts lately, hasn't there?
There has, a lot of it, from a technology standpoint, as we all know, they've tried the artificial heart. They still are doing some work around that, but I think if as AI can be pushed to its limits, I think there's some elements it's going to be bringing to the table, both design wise, but also manufacturability wise and sustainability wise. That I think is going to be very, very telling. I'd say in the next 5 years, they're going to come up with some pretty cool techniques, and I think modeling of different types of materials that could be used to basically make an artificial heart that would be active. So pretty.
Yeah, and there's a lot of fun stuff with enhancing the current material that you have to work with by substituting minimal material in there specifically for your needs. So, kind of like a stint, but
Yeah, and then the other thing was, just around that, because of the data that can come out of that artificial heart, then obviously using that data to perfect it, to make it better down the line, and do it much quicker than we had in the past because of AI.
yeah, you no longer need a pacemaker, but something that can just read your rhythm and have much smaller components. Very exciting. Also, very excited for that. And I think everybody with a heart should be excited about that. We've had some fun with the Lewis and Clark book references. Is there any kind of book reference you'd like to share with us?
No, I mean that's the one right now that I think is pretty phenomenal. Again, if you're in AI, I think it's again very telling. Just to have the opportunity to read that book, do that. And like I said, if you can have the chance to watch The West, that Kevin Costner's series that was on over the summer last spring, try to find that and watch that because it's again it's Americana. It's the building of the United States today, and just kind of what a lot of folks went through back in those times. And again, the struggles, the perseverance, the drive, the initiative, and not knowing at all where they were headed and what the outcomes might be. Kind of like where we're at with AI right now. So definitely wrap yourself around that.
Awesome. And that's the character of Meriwether Lewis, explorer in the wilderness. So I'm excited to get my hands on that. Awesome. Awesome. Beautiful. Let me give you the last word, sir.
Yeah, I just really again appreciate the time, Phil. It's really great questions and good commentary. Again for those folks that are listening, don't be fearful of AI. Grasp it, understand it. Go in with your eyes wide open, but also be wary. And I think again, from a tech standpoint, as the folks hopefully listening to this maybe have kids, and or if there's any folks that are in school right now or kids that are listening, you know, be in that know. Try to get your mentoring from folks that are in jobs or in roles or in companies that you are potentially looking at getting into or wanting to be a part of. Get those connections. There's LinkedIn, there's Twitter, etc. Make that happen, and definitely, just go for it. My mantra is from Jim Valvano. If you don't know him, he was the coach of North Carolina State for a number of years with their basketball team. He developed cancer and unfortunately passed away. But his impetus started V Foundation, and his drive and kind of his initiative of trying to help not only himself but others was kind of formed around what the V Foundation is today, and a lot of these other cancer societies are part of. And his basically never give up, and just never give up. And if you've got something you're determined on, you have something you have a chance to get and or achieve, go for it. And that'd be my takeaway.
Beautiful. Eric, thank you so much for sharing so much of yourself and your personal stories. There's a lot of golden nuggets in here for any entrepreneur, large businesses, enterprise guys, and SMBs. If you hear yourself saying I'm an SMB, maybe think to see if you're stuck there, if you're happy there, and it's maybe call Eric if you feel like you're stuck.
Sounds good. Thanks, Phil. Have a great one.
Thank you so much for your time today.